I'm number 4. I think the technical word for that is the anticlimax, but we'll struggle on. Actually, I want to address something that Nina brought up that I think is an important point to make. You see, I've been an activist, an outgoing campaigner, a real provocative kind of guy for atheism for about 20 years now. And I will confess this, when I started, I had this naively optimistic idea that all we got to do is get rid of religion and everything will be beautiful. Right? There will be no further problems. Of course, as I got deeper and deeper in the movement, more involved with it, I began to encounter the uncomfortable fact that there are atheists who are jerks. It doesn't make you perfect. It's really sad. And so there's this growing awareness that atheism is not enough. And I think that's a slogan for many of my followers and friends and fans, and that is simply that you need something more than just disbelief in order to make it in the world. And I would say by extension, similarly, secularism is not enough. That we have to have more than simply a secular set of values, because that's not necessarily a good set of values. I'll remind you of Leonie's list of all these secular values that were listed up there, and many of them are things that perhaps we would not endorse. That we have to have a mechanism for selecting among them and deciding what is appropriate. Now, that's not to say that secularism isn't important. Secularism is the floor. That's the minimal standard we should set for human decency, is that you should discard outmoded notions, these traditions and superstitions that guide your life. You see, because religion is, and always has been, a tool for authoritarianism. By its very nature, it imposes a vision of our interactions with each other and the world that is hierarchical and ordered and linear. The orders come from above, and you will obey them. That's the way it works. And further, the concept of faith is antithetical to transparency. You cannot question these orders because there is no path for verification. You are expected to trust but not verify. You are expected to accept without reason. Now, secularism is the rejection of the validity of divine authority as a source of any kind for values, moral, material, political, social, or intellectual. Truth and justice are not meted out by a singular authoritative source, filtered through the interpretations of priests and religious leaders, but are instead derived from we the people, something Annie Laurie Gaylor mentioned earlier as well. And it's anchored in reality by a pattern of continuous assessment against measurable real-world effects. Not how does a God feel about this question, but does this decision improve human welfare? Now, secularists are often told that without a central authority in a god or gods, we lack a source of objective morality. And I know it's popular to try and rebut that, saying, no, we're moral people, but I would actually agree with that. We do not have a central objective morality. I'd go further and say that believing in a divine source of truth and justice doesn't mean it exists, so even the believers lack a source of an objective central morality. Instead, all the values we have, no matter what they are personal and subjective. You can choose to believe whatever you like, and adding in the name of God to a belief does not make it any more valid. Neither does saying in the name of Richard Dawkins. Now, this all sounds rather freewheeling, okay, and I can imagine conservative people interpreting this, oh, he's endorsing free love and rape and bank robbery or whatever. But that's not what I'm saying, but it is really kind of open to freewheeling. You can have a secular tyranny or a secular democracy. There are all kinds of different versions of secular governments that we could impose. As was mentioned earlier, Nazi Germany, great example of a secular government that we do not want to emulate. So again, secularism isn't the answer. In and of itself, secularism doesn't imply a particular form of government or relationship between citizens. It only knocks away one, just one, prop that supports an authoritarian form of government. There are many others, as we are seeing in the United States, which is gradually evolving towards a police state, a secular police state, in the name of security and safety and the foreign enemy who must be suppressed. That's not religious at all. That's an entirely secular argument for restricting our personal freedoms. But the important thing about having a secular government is that it also says that our values have empirical consequences, things we can measure, that we can have a set of values that say, here's what constitutes a successful state. Does this state meet them? And I think we can all agree, at least here we can all agree, that a theocracy doesn't meet them. That a theocracy does not meet any of our secular goals for a good government. But we have to further question, does a secular state do it as well? Now, as a scientist, I'm of course entirely comfortable with the idea of empiricism. It's a good thing to progress by trial and error. As an evolutionary biologist, I also recognize a metric for progress. Does a behavior increase the viability of individuals and of a species? It's actually rather cut and dry. We should promote values that increase the stability and success of individuals and populations because the alternative, the metric for failure, is called extinction. And we'd rather avoid that, I think. Although, of course, that's also a very subjective value that we... Anyway. And I think I can safely say that any set of values that limits the potential of half the population, that reduces the health and happiness of one gender or race or class, is empirically detrimental to the long-term viability of the whole. I can definitely say that there's no objective reason one would argue that being born a woman or black or poor should make any individual a lesser contributor to our fully shared humanity. In short, one significant effect of secularism is that it means we have the freedom to make choices. And more, if we care about the success of individuals and of our society, it means we have an obligation to make choices that benefit humanity, all of humanity, and not just the privileged few. Secularism is about the responsibility to better ourselves, instead of simply accepting the status quo. Ultimately, secularism must be revolutionary and progressive because it encourages change and improvement. It is an empirical model of governance that demands responsiveness to the real world to the consequences of our actions. And that's really why I'm here at all. As a white middle-class American male, I am the recipient of a vast amount of privileged benefits. However, as an atheist and a secularist, I realize that I simply won the cosmic lottery. There is no objective source of my privilege. It's not that I deserve all of my good fortune more than any other person on the planet. It's also a matter of having a sense of fairness and justice. Those other good secular values, I'm sure they were somewhere on Leonie's list. It's my choice and my obligation to advocate for the greater equality of opportunity for all human beings, not just my fellow white male Americans. So that's really where I leave us with, is that's our choice, and it really is a matter of choice. That as freethinkers, as secular people, every decision we have is not dictated to us from above. It's something that we assess and decide for ourselves, using those values like justice and empathy and fairness and equality, and use those to guide the direction we want our secular government to take. Thank you.